Produce 101 was never just a survival show. It was a pressure cooker that could turn trainees into stars overnight, but it could also expose the brutal truth that not every breakout moment becomes a lasting career. Some contestants left with massive attention, only to fade when the cameras moved on. Others managed to turn one season, one ranking, one brief national obsession into something much bigger. Real name value, real staying power, and a career that could survive beyond the system that created them. And that is exactly why this ranking is more complicated than it looks. Because when we talk about the most successful male idols to come out of the Produce franchise, we are not just asking who was popular in the moment. We are asking who truly transformed that opportunity into long-term impact. Who built the strongest identity after the show? Who stayed visible? Who proved they were more than a product of one explosive season? Today we are looking at three names: Kang Daniel, Kim Yohan, and Kim Woo Seok. But by the end of this video, the most interesting question may not be who made the list. It may be who truly deserves number one. What made Produce 101 so powerful was not just its format, but its promise. It offered a stage where visibility could change overnight. A trainee who had once been overlooked could suddenly become a national favorite, while someone with early momentum could disappear just as quickly. In that sense, Produce was never simply a competition. It was a machine that created opportunity, pressure, and illusion all at once. It gave contestants a spotlight, but it never guaranteed what would happen after that spotlight moved away. And that is where this conversation becomes interesting. Because success after Produce cannot be measured by one thing alone. It is not enough to say someone ranked high, debuted in a project group, or trended during the broadcast. Real success begins after the finale. It begins when the temporary hype is gone, when the project group ends, when the safety net disappears, and an idol has to prove that their name still means something on its own. So, for this ranking, we are looking at success through several layers. First, there is post-show impact. How strongly each idol exploded after the program and how much attention they were able to carry forward. Second, there is individual star power, not just talent, but that harder-to-define quality that makes people remember a face, a voice, an aura. Third, there is career durability, the ability to remain relevant beyond the brief life cycle of a survival show or temporary group. And finally, there is identity, how successfully each person turned Produce from a moment into a foundation for something bigger. That is why Kang Daniel, Kim Yohan, and Kim Woo Seok are such fascinating names to compare. All three found success, but not in the same way. One became a symbol of explosive mass appeal. One represented the rise of a fresh, new generation idol. And one proved that resilience and reinvention can be just as powerful as immediate hype. And among those three paths, one stands above the rest. If there is one male idol who came out of the Produce franchise and immediately felt bigger than the show itself, it was Kang Daniel. What made Daniel such a powerful figure was not simply that he ranked at the top. Produce had many popular contestants, many strong performers, and many people who gained attention in the heat of the moment. But Daniel's rise felt different because he did not just look like a successful trainee fighting for debut. He looked like someone the public had already accepted as a star. There was a scale to his appeal that went beyond fandom enthusiasm. Even during the competition, he carried the kind of presence that made people feel they were watching a center, not a hopeful candidate. And that distinction matters, because in survival shows, popularity can come from many places. Sometimes it comes from narrative. Sometimes it comes from sympathy. Sometimes it comes from a single memorable stage. But with Daniel, the attraction felt broader and more instinctive. He had performance power, yes, but he also had charisma that translated easily to the screen. He could feel intense on stage and approachable off it. He had the confidence of a performer, but also the relatability of someone people wanted to root for. That combination is rare, and in a show built on emotional investment, it was almost unstoppable. What truly separates Daniel from many other Produce success stories, however, is what happened after the program. For a lot of idols, produce becomes the peak, the moment everything else is measured against. The real challenge begins once the system that amplified them disappears. Once the cameras are gone, once the group promotions end, once the public moves on to the next season, the question becomes brutally simple. Can your name still carry weight on its own? In Daniel's case, the answer was yes, and not in a small way. He did not remain visible merely as that contestant or that former center. He built a personal brand strong enough to stand outside the produce framework. That is an incredibly important difference. There are idols who leave survival shows with recognition, and then there are idols who leave with the foundation of a career. Daniel belongs firmly in the second category. His name developed into something independent, something that did not need constant reference to the show to feel relevant. That is why his success feels symbolic. He represents the most powerful fantasy that Produce ever sold to its contestants and its viewers. The idea that one breakout moment can become a lasting career if the person at the center of it is compelling enough. Daniel did not simply benefit from the momentum of the franchise. He absorbed that momentum, expanded it, and turned it into a larger identity. And that is what makes him such a difficult benchmark for everyone else on this list. Because when you talk about post-Produce success in the male idol space, Kang Daniel is not just one example among many. He is the standard that forces every other name to answer the same question. Was your success only dramatic in the moment, or was it strong enough to survive after the moment had passed? Daniel's did. But success does not only come in one form. And the next name on this list proves that a very different kind of momentum can be just as compelling. If Kang Daniel represents explosive, almost inevitable star power, then Kim Yohan represents something more modern. Momentum built through freshness, adaptability, and a kind of appeal that feels instantly accessible. What made Yohan stand out was that he did not feel like a familiar trainee archetype recycled through another survival show. He came across as someone with a very immediate pull. Youthful, bright, and easy to connect with, but still carrying enough competitiveness to make viewers take him seriously. In a program like Produce, where dozens of contestants are fighting for attention at the same time, that kind of clarity matters. Some people impress slowly, others need a major turning point. Yohan, on the other hand, felt like the kind of contestant the camera naturally liked from the start, and that gave him a different kind of strength. Where Daniel's rise felt massive and overwhelming, Yohan's felt fast and clean. Viewers could see potential in him very quickly, but they could also see movement. That is one of the most attractive qualities in any survival show narrative. Growth that feels visible in real time. Audiences do not only want talent, they want progression. They want to feel that the person they are supporting is becoming bigger right in front of them. Yohan fit that structure extremely well. He was not just admired for what he already had. He was exciting because he looked like someone moving forward at exactly the right speed. That is what makes his success different from Daniel's. Daniel became a phenomenon large enough to transcend the show almost immediately. Yohan, by contrast, represented the next generation version of Produce success. Less about overwhelming national shockwave and more about building a strong, highly marketable identity that could continue developing after the spotlight of the show. His image felt current. His presence felt flexible. And that flexibility matters in an industry where an idol often has to become more than one thing in order to stay visible. That is why Yohan's post-show significance is not just about what happened during the competition, but about what kind of figure he became afterward. He carried the advantages of a successful survival show contestant, but he also had something beyond that, the ability to fit naturally into the evolving expectations of a newer idol generation. He did not feel trapped by the program that introduced him. Instead, he felt like someone using it as a springboard, and that makes him a very strong name in any conversation about long-term Produce success. Because Yohan's career path shows that not every major success story has to look monumental in the same way. Some people dominate through sheer scale. Others succeed by arriving at exactly the right time, with exactly the right image, and knowing how to turn that timing into sustained relevance. Still, there is one more name on this list, and his story may be the most emotionally layered of them all. If Kang Daniel represents scale and Kim Yohan represents speed, then Kim Woo Seok represents something quieter, but in many ways more difficult. Longevity built through reinvention. Woo Seok's story is compelling because it does not rely on just one dramatic image of success. His appeal was never only about a single explosive moment or one season of overwhelming public attention. Instead, his strength came from the way he stayed memorable. In an industry where visibility can disappear almost overnight, that is not a small achievement. It is one thing to attract attention in the middle of a survival show. It is another thing to remain emotionally present in the minds of fans once the competition is over and the market has already moved on. And that is where Woo Seok becomes especially interesting. There is a distinct kind of idol success that is built not on noise, but on consistency. Not on dominating every room, but on creating a personal identity strong enough that people keep returning to it. Woo Seok had that kind of pull. His image carried elegance, polish, and a sense of individuality that made him easy to remember. He had visual impact, of course, but more importantly, he had the kind of aura that encourages loyalty. He did not just attract quick attention. He inspired a steadier attachment, and that kind of attachment often lasts longer than louder trends. That is why produce functioned as such an important turning point in his journey. It offered a stage large enough to reframe how people saw him, and once that door opened, the real challenge was whether he could build something durable from it. Woo Seok's significance lies in the fact that he did not let the show remain a temporary spotlight. He used it as a chance to reshape the conversation around himself. In that sense, his post-produce path feels less like a simple continuation and more like a careful repositioning. And that takes a different kind of strength, because not all success stories are powered by immediate domination. Some are powered by resilience, by knowing how to preserve relevance, refine image, and keep evolving without losing the qualities that made people care in the first place. Woo Seok's career carries that energy. He may not represent the loudest kind of triumph to come out of the franchise, but he absolutely represents one of the most durable and layered versions of it. That is exactly why he belongs in this top 3. Because produce may create stars quickly, but only a few people prove they can continue shaping their own narrative after the machine stops moving. Woo Seok is one of them. What makes this ranking difficult is that Kang Daniel, Kim Yohan, and Kim Woo Seok are not successful in the same way. If they were, this list would be simple, but each of them represents a different model of what post-produced success can look like. Kang Daniel represents the most explosive version of it. He is the clearest example of a contestant whose popularity did not stay trapped inside the show that created it. His impact felt immediate, massive, and unmistakably public. He was not just remembered as a winner or a center. He became a figure whose name could stand on its own, and that is why his success feels larger than the produce framework itself. Kim Yohan, on the other hand, represents a more modern kind of breakthrough. His strength lies in how naturally he fit the image of a new generation idol with wide appeal. He had freshness, visibility, and the kind of upward momentum that made his growth feel exciting to watch. His success may not carry exactly the same symbolic scale as Daniel's, but it carries a different kind of significance. He showed how produce could still launch someone into a strong, adaptable, and highly recognizable career path. Then there is Kim Woo Seok, whose position in this conversation comes from durability. His journey feels less like a single overwhelming explosion and more like a sustained effort to remain relevant, distinctive, and emotionally memorable. He embodies the idea that success is not always measured by how loudly it begins, but by how well it survives change. In many ways, his story is the most nuanced of the 3 because it is built on reinvention rather than shock value. And that brings us to the ranking itself. At number 3 is Kim Woo Seok. That placement does not diminish what he achieved. If anything, it highlights how strong this top 3 really is. Woo Seok earns his place because he proved that Produce could be more than a temporary spotlight. He turned it into a meaningful chapter of a longer, more resilient career. His success may not be the most explosive on this list, but it is one of the most enduring. At number 2 is Kim Yohan. Yohan stands here because he represents one of the most convincing examples of next-generation Produce success. He had the right image, the right momentum, and the ability to turn visibility into a broader identity. He feels like someone who understood how to use the platform not just to rise, but to keep building. His success is bright, fast-moving, and highly adaptable, exactly the kind of profile that defines a strong modern idol trajectory. And at number 1 is Kang Daniel. Because when we talk about the most successful male idol to come out of the Produce franchise, Daniel still feels like the name that is hardest to argue against. He did not simply win attention. He turned attention into scale, visibility into brand power, and a survival show breakthrough into a career with real independent weight. He is not just one successful Produce graduate among others. He is, in many ways, the standard by which the others are measured. And maybe that is the real legacy of Produce 101. Not just that it created stars, but that it created very different roads to success. Kang Daniel, Kim Yohan, and Kim Woo Seok each prove that in their own way, one through impact, one through momentum, and one through resilience. So in the end, the ranking matters. But the bigger story is this. Surviving Produce may open the door, but only a few idols truly know how to walk through it and build something that lasts. If you want, I can now combine all 6 parts into one polished full 2,400-word script for easy voiceover use.